So I love Winky D's music. I don't think he has done anything wrong. And if you want to look at it politically, both sides sing political songs.
Yeah.
Sakawe is the problem. Let us not tether people or hinder them from creativity. I have sung songs myself. And I wouldn't want somebody to come and tell me kuti imba so. Saka totoita ka database rema lyrics.
Yeah,
Unongonosotora utsvaga rhythm wongotanga ungoimba. Let
Moody say, can you tell me Moody say? Moody say, can you tell me Judy say? Muma ghetto Moody say, Moody say. Boy. Moody say, yeah. Incoming. Ndenge Maradona, ndenge ndichidisha, ndichipasa, ndichigona. Inga mnozviziva anomakwane bhora. Ndenge vachizama kundisendera magora tumahora asi zvinhu zvatinoona mnasamora.
One of the hardest things to do is, we talked about it briefly before we started, is to get people to come and do things like this.
Okay.
Because first it's a time commitment, and then also you don't really know what it is that you're getting into. There's a possibility that you will end up in a position where you do something or say something wrong, and then you think, but there was also nothing to benefit from it, really and truly. But you've consistently made an effort to be out there, to share things about your life. You're on social media, your Instagram page is active. Is that a conscious branding decision?
I wouldn't describe it as branding per se, but I recognize that as a public person, one needs also to be public to some degree.
Yeah.
And that in the process you work with people like yourselves, journalists whose raw material is really information that you give to them.
Yeah.
So my attitude basically is to say, be available for scrutiny if you're a public official, and also help other professions that are dependent on you. Journalists, for example, to give them the raw material.
Yeah.
Because if you don't do that, you put those professions, the journalistic professions, in a quagmire, in a very difficult situation, because they must write something. So in the end, not being accessible to them, you cause them to just write anything.
Yeah.
Without the benefit of your viewpoint. And so that's the way, whichever way, whether it's on social media or not, or within the immediate family or the broader family, I generally like, interacting with the people. It's what drives me. It gives me pleasure to be meeting particularly young people who have a lot of things to say and a lot of desires. So maybe out of that emerges what I would call the unintentional brand.
Yeah.
Not that I actually go out of my way to try and portray myself in a certain way, but if I was a completely private individual, my outlook would probably be different.
So it's very interesting because you talk about the young people that you interact with, and part of that is there's a brand of politics more commonly found in the West, for example. So for instance, when a presidential candidate in the US is going through their run, they'll go on Jimmy Kimmel, or they'll go on all these, Breakfast Club, these comedy things or whatever. And it's because there's an understanding of the reach that you're getting.
Yes.
I feel like our politicians here, across the divide, haven't actually understood that yet. Or maybe it's that they think it doesn't matter yet, or I don't know. Like, what is that? Is it that it's not a functional thing for this environment?
I think it's a multiplicity of factors, one of which is the view that we've taken of social media. I think the preponderant view is to say that social media is not good.
Yeah.
I do not necessarily agree with that. I think just like you can use a knife to cut an orange, you can also use it
Stab a man.
to stab a man. So I think that social media is very important in this time space that we have as a tool of communication.
Yeah.
More so, I think it's a tool that can be used effectively by public bodies, government ministries, government officials, to make information more available.
Yeah.
And I sometimes feel that maybe we don't give the public sufficient information.
Yeah.
And so people default to speculation about things that really are not of much consequence. And so when people don't get that information, and especially if, say, a public official appears to be reluctant to give that information, then that worsens the levels of distrust.
Yeah.
So people saying, Saka, what could be gay or something, and yet most of the time it's really something that's not of much importance. So yeah, I think that social media is an important tool.
Yeah.
We haven't harnessed it enough. I still feel that there is a critical mass of political players who are still very much aloof.
Yeah.
And you know, to be fair to them, social media can be very toxic. People abuse the freedom of speech that they have, and they find it very easy because the access is easy.
Yeah.
Whereas in the past, say somebody of ministerial level would be aloof and unreachable. On social media, they're just a click away. So people find it easy to just say anything.
Funny enough, I just remembered, I think there was maybe about a year ago, Mrs. Titi Masiwa.
Yes.
She went on social media and she put out a statement about, I think it might have been about how, you know, Zimbabweans aren't working enough or they are on social media too much. I don't want to misquote. And there was this influx of people saying, you know, and it goes, I mean, it becomes personal, it becomes, it attacks the business, it attacks, you know, the family. And I remember thinking at the time, in normal life, people don't have access to Miss Titima. If I wanted to tell her that to her face, I wouldn't know where to find her. But then social media has given people, you know, that ability to just go and be like, so
and then they abuse it.
I can tweet the president, meaning I can say whatever I want to the president. But you raise a really interesting point in your response about the issue of the scrutiny that comes with putting out information or putting yourself out there. And it's something that I consistently say, you know, we talk about in my day job on radio, we talk about a lot of, you know, business politics issues. So, for instance, let's say there's gold, no, not even the gold coins. There was the e-passport. They announced that the e-passport was going to be coming out. And social media goes left with, why is this necessary? We should be fixing the roads instead of the path. And it's, you know, I genuinely believe that is a communication thing. I think you have not communicated well enough if people will come and say, or even the satellite, when they sent the satellite out. And I'm not sure whether people thought we were sending out a rocket or whatever. It's like, no, that shouldn't be a priority. But what can be done about that communication? How can we communicate better whatever policy we have? And again, I think this is on both sides of the aisle.
Well, Like I said, I think that social media is a very important tool, particularly for government, you know, to proliferate government's views on specific things. But I think more importantly to communicate the successes of government. You know, people love information.
Yeah.
And like I said earlier on, when they don't have the information, you leave lots of room for speculation. That's why in my tenure as Deputy Minister of Transport, I would stop where people were working, fixing a road, which others would be claiming nothing is being done about.
Yeah.
So you are able to correct that narrative and actually speak to the workers. And the workers also appreciate that at your level you are, you know, willing to stop. And talk to them, because many of them would not have, would never have met their minister. So if you stop there and talk to them, you are at the same time doing good PR work for the ministry or the relevant parastatal. But for government generally, for people to actually see that work is being done and you're correcting falsities that may be out there. So, and I don't think that, I really wish that government leaders would do a bit more in terms of communicating through social media. But there's a lot that is happening, but it can never be enough to communicate the various projects, the various you know, good works that are happening, because that is an effect of uplifting the confidence and hope for the people. But when there is a blanket around the work that is being done, people simply go onto the negative default, and those with bad intent can also fire up to say there's nothing happening, but simply because there is no communication.
So there's your work when you were deputy minister. It was deputy minister of transport.
Yes.
And during that time, I also remember you used to post the progress pictures or the progress videos whenever you'd be out on the field.
Yes.
And that's government work.
Yes.
How do you separate? And I've always been curious. How do you make the distinction between the government work and the politics? Can those things ever really truly be separated, or is it all tied in together there?
Yeah, well, at certain points it's one and the same thing. Because when you are doing government work, essentially you are doing political work. You are delivering on what government promised it would give to the people. So there are linkages there. So also when you are not performing, or when you are not seen to be performing, the public have a right to say, okay, you are the governing party, this is what you promised, you haven't delivered. So you really need to have a consciousness that says you are really speaking to the whole country about the work that government is doing, and also be prepared to take flake, to take criticism on behalf of government as a governmental actor. People may start to link work by other departments which are not relevant to your own department. And at that level, you must have the capacity to respond in a manner that is satisfying to the inquiring public.
I see. Another, sort of interesting dynamic that happens in and around this time, and obviously we've just come out of the primaries. We'll talk a little bit about that as well. But we've also seen the influx of new candidates, all different kinds of candidates. A lot of them, for someone on the outside, very interesting. Before we go, and I'm not going to go into specifics, but I'm curious to know how you feel about the renewal or the changes that are happening within the Zanu PF, especially with the new candidates?
Well, I think, it's a positive thing. And in some instances, it might be spontaneous. And I think that's how organizations grow. New people are coming in. I also was very new at some point.
Yeah.
And there was also resistance to entry of people of my age at the time. And eventually I came in. I was an MP for two terms, the last one ending pretty soon. And I think it's a positive thing.
Yeah.
I lost to a young lawyer. I respect that. There is no election that is perfect. One could raise all manner of objections and appeal, but I think not trying to work with democracy also should help you to say, even if you have difficulties with the outcome, to be able to embrace it and move on. Especially where you have done 2 terms.
Yeah.
And somebody else wants to come in. I think it's a fair proposal to say, you have spent 10 years in this position, and to some, you may not have performed. It's always a matter of opinion. But at the end of the day, I think it's important, especially if it's intra-party, to accept.
Yeah.
And not want to delay matters by appealing against this or raising this or that issue. I think at the end of the day, what's important is the threshold that the process has reached.
Yeah.
Is it acceptable? And even if you reach the conclusion that it's not acceptable, sometimes it makes better sense to accept what is there and move. And equally, I think the same precepts apply even at a national level. There is no election that is perfect. Look at what happened in the US with Trump. Look at what is happening now with Trump. So there's no election that is perfect. Anyone can perforate the election that has happened and critique it and find mistakes and blame this or that person. But I think the question really is it in substantial compliance with what is expected internationally? And is it the right thing to do? And so you take it like that and you move on. Yeah.
That has to be some of the most encouraging. It's really encouraging to hear that sort of perspective coming from our side of the globe.
Me, I want to ask Macroy. People don't really know a Basara MP na council from my own point of view. Especially where I come from. There's a councillor from a certain party. I got voted because they loved him. And then that guy, the only thing that he did for his team was kutora matombo, bavara pa ground pe bora kuti zurori sapin ground. That was the only thing that he did. And people are even praising, saying he did a good job. Though Basara council, Rena MP. And then the MP, asara musungo paze busy by Jona, my MP on my stana, Romash, but an amakola, say. At Satambo Mona, MBA, Ajizumungo, Ashta Road Kokstungi Zambura, Ofa, Asata Motorachi. Sala, I don't want you gonna bass it, or come on out. Well, I relax.
I see. I believe that Parliament must have a TV station, not just a Wednesday afternoon, a TV station. I believe that the public must be able to see the work that's happening in the committees, which you never see. and maybe that MP speaks to my committees. We've very little time for questions without notice in Parliament on Wednesday afternoons. I think it stretches from 2:30 maybe to about 4. And that's the time. Of course, it can be extended occasionally, but it's not enough. Remember, we have how many MPs in Parliament? There's multitudes of them.
For 5 years, my Wednesday, ASA. I said I'm Bokoso.
But do you check? Do you watch every Wednesday?
That's
There's
If I
no
miss
way.
it, someone from my ghetto is watching it. Apana. And then the thing that he said was like, I'm only a son of a builder. So what do you expect from me?
I think I daroga because pamwe mimi munenge muchimuita vake cleaning and kana chikoro, all those requests have been made against me, and there are people who blame me kuti handina kuisa magetsi mudzimba dzekumusha dzeuswa dzedza. There are people, I saw one last week, I didn't respond to it. I just said, and maybe this is a joke. But yeah, right, the question that you are raising is an important one. But it's not just what people expect. It's also why the person actually went in to be an MP. And some people being an MP is a job.
Yeah.
Sakakaruza, their livelihood issues. Someone who becomes emotional and tries to fight by all means so that they stay in. And I think that maybe our initial MPs did us a disservice to that extent, because I can see that this thing came from somewhere. And people will be told, so to them, that's the image.
Yeah.
But the public expectations on elected officials, a lot of them really have got nothing to do with you being an MP. But I know I could get a call whilst I'm here that somebody has passed away, they need a coffin. Or somebody has passed away, they don't have transport to take them to Mtoko. You know? That type of thing. This morning somebody wants a job and they're coming to me. I'd rather end up with prisons. They come to me, and in our environment you can't really tell them off. Say, this is nyaradzo, you know what I mean? You actually go and help and even attend the funerals. So in the strictest of senses, my job as an MP is to fight for central government resources, also to come and deal with issues in my constituency where applicable. That's the broadest sense. But there are so many things that MPs do which have nothing to do with central government, and which the electorate expects them to do. And regalia chaichayo Zambia area, unanokwanisa urega kuvotera because ana kuri wanu. You know what I mean? You don't make them, you don't manufacture them. Not everyone can get them, but they can actually be a lot of bitterness.
Yeah.
So there is also a need to separate the role of the councillor. The councillor also goes to their council to compete for resources to come into their ward. But sadly, in some instances, the caliber of the councillors is such that they have no clue what the financials of the council are like and what their responsibilities are like. So now, I want to go focus just on if the president has presented the presidential input scheme. No, basarake chetero rekupa vanhu, maybe nekuvabira in the process. You know what I mean? So something has to happen in that space so that you've...
And it actually goes into what I was going to ask you about next, around the caliber. So it's exciting that we're getting these new people. A lot of them, again, without going into specifics, are na boss, chakuti, and you know, this being a here and that being a there. How important is it? And I know you've done all right for yourself. How important is it for you to be in a good financial position before you pursue public office?
Well, depends on how you look at it. If you use your financial wherewithal to buy votes, for example, I've had reports in areas where individuals are paid to vote. I think that is that's sad, because it then affects the mindset of the person from the issues. You know, there are people who in a month will not get $5 or $10. So if you give them $20, it's a big thing. They can do what you want. So at the end, a lot of those people become electoral fodder. You know, they are just feeding into the electoral system and will probably be forgotten about by the person elected as soon as they are elected. But if the issue is to put your national interest at the forefront, I don't see why, for example, in our economy, for argument's sake, I would use a significant amount of money to campaign, because all that I'm doing is I'm looking for an opportunity to be able to serve this constituency. But I'm sure there are some who are saying, okay, I want to be an MP so that I can become a minister or what, and then I can get this or that. You know, I don't know. But my own approach is I'm looking for an opportunity to serve. Not just my constituency, but as I've done in the past by holding ministerial positions, I'm able to work for my country, and but still you have criticism. If you are in the public space, you must just be prepared to, even within Parliament. You know, sometimes I just watch it when people defend some people. I remember walking into Parliament one day, and some guy just says, Chasi Putsek. You know what I mean? And these are people who are supposed to be honorable. What does honorable mean? It means being civil, respectable.
How does someone just do, like, what happens after that? Because if that happens on the street, then there's a scuffle. So, like, in that sort of setting, and we've seen scuffles in different parliaments.
But you see, it now becomes a question of personality. For me, I just look at the guy. What else do I say? You know, I don't even know why they would do such a thing, but there are people who are like that. So Parliament itself is composed of the same characters that you see in daily life. But there are things that happen there which I would never do, in terms of, you know, just shouting at somebody or listening to somebody, giving them time to say what they're supposed to say. You listen, and your opportunity to respond comes. But when you are howling and shouting at people, the whole institution ceases to be honorable, because the view then that the public takes is, "I'm not wasting time, Neymar." You know what I mean? They are not talking about our issues. Warungo shout across the table. So it's a problem.
For one to be a minister, honestly, I'm plan, and like, you have an idea on how to handle your ministerial so that it can benefit the country at large.
You know, well, the way it works is, I might be seated here and I've been appointed a minister of Chakuti. So I may not have specific plans, but what you need are the leadership skills. Number one, the ability to understand the issues that particular portfolio covers, and also a strategic mind, a mind that says if we handle this in this manner, we're going to succeed. I went to the Ministry of Transport. I'd never worked in the Ministry of Transport. Where initially I was Deputy Minister for Justice. One could say, well, that's my area of training, so it was easier. But transport, I really had no clue. Waste, still energy. You know, as Deputy Minister, you can hide behind your minister and people may not see you. But when you are a minister, you are out there.
Every time I get
Every-
panodzingwa.
But energy, baby,
Advocate, how far?
Yes.
but energy pepe papa muripo
Yeah.
azvazviri nani
That's that.
ezinozvika magetsi munhu akashaya zvekuita ari kuenda tikutamba hide and seek nemagetsi ukapepuka na4 ariko I think andodzi anotaunikwa handi arova
Okay, but so there's the part of, let's talk about the energy thing. There's control that you have over the energy situation, and then there are things that are beyond your control. And that's why energy is an issue almost globally at the moment.
Yeah.
Because, you know, for instance, because of our sources, if we're using Kariba, if the water levels are low, we still have to wait for those rains to come down for the DRC to reap. How much control do you have as a Minister of Energy at any given time?
Yes, you must remember that every minister works for the boss, and the boss is the president. The president cannot micromanage you, you know, from 8 to 5. You must be thoughtful and strategic. So you come up with a plan. You are talking about Kariba. And so you must then study the situation and say, okay, this is what is happening with Kariba, or these are the risks that come from us using water to generate power from Kariba, the receding levels. What is it that we must do? And you've got to think around new areas of investment like solar. Of course, solar farms will take place, but why not reduce our dependency on, say, South Africa and Kariba and Mozambique by generating more solar power on top of this building? And why not make sure that all our hospitals are solarized so that people don't die simply because there is no power? They must die because, you know, maybe their hour is come or something of that sort. So you then have to present those to your principals and start driving them. You also cannot afford to sit in the office and say, okay, I will sort out this problem. Because remember, you're delivering on a political mandate. There are people there who elected you, which resulted in you becoming a minister.
Appointed,
Yes, they want power, they don't want stories. You see what I mean? So there is some element, I think in a crisis sort of environment, there is an element of an interventionist approach. Where you can't just be, you know, on your seat in your office and hope things will happen. You must be able to, in my view, directly confront the relevant departments and make sure that they are primed. Let me give you an example. When you have international soccer, Zimbabweans love soccer. And somebody sitting at ZESA may not think about it politically. But if you're a minister, you have to think about it politically to say, this is a sore spot. People won't be excited. So you then discuss with these people to say, look, can you distribute your power along these lines. For the next 2 days, Kunema international matches, and the whole of Zimbabwe is waiting to watch. So I'm just giving that as an example.
Final takanaiwa tichironera mubhava panze mudhara final reference
Waite ubhava.
sure kumba kwakusina kamagetsi
Kune mabhava here mazuva. Ndaimbotengesa mubhava saka
Mubhava. As in you're a bartender.
No. Iwe utaura zvebha, ini ndutaura bhava. Zvakasiyana.
mabhava ekanzura
Kanzura anenge mabhenji akavakirwa zvidhina.
ariko but
Rangu ranaitengesa inzi mandevele bhava.
Oh.
Kubulawa. Tengesa mazai manero. Mazai.
Let's talk about that for a little bit. Let's get an understanding. Why? Yeah.
It's a survivor.
How old are you? How old were you at that time? And
I would have
at what
been-
point in your career?
Didn't have a career at that time. Well, just I think my 7 years.
7 years old.
Yeah. Mbhawa manheru kwete masikati. Vanhu vadhakwa. So chidhakwa chitotora zai chotogogodza choti ndipe sauti chodya chopedza chokudza kuti ranga risinganaki. Iwo apo wakadai.
So is that because there were hardships at home?
Yeah.
What kind of family did you come from?
Less than average. Ndisai ndichitaura nenyaya dzeghetto because ndodzandonzwisisa nedzekumusha dzekufudza mombe.
Yeah.
But my father used to work for the railways. He was a chef at the railways. And my mother was an entrepreneur of great standing.
Yeah.
But she used to do a lot of things, knitting, anything really.
Yeah.
Baking, and I would go around selling. Mazai was tengesa mbawa.
Yeah.
And so forth. So yeah, basically a tough life. I think that's like most ghetto lives.
Yeah.
You know, in your 4-roomed house, there's no more extended houses I wonder, but for us, it had 4 rooms, a kitchen where sometimes you'd have to sleep if there were visitors, spare, which was never a spare because every day might engage muchitorara muno.
Yeah.
Then
nomaigara mabhara futi
then dining mamune masofa.
Yeah.
The main bedroom. So
I just know it's such a sharp contrast to what you've been able to provide for your kids, and just congratulations on that.
yeah, thank you. You know, it's I always say to people, the response to that transition is interesting because there are many good things about the ghetto.
Yeah.
You know your neighbors. You lend and borrow from each other. Nechi bridge chekugara until late. Mchitaura nyaya.
That's where most of the brilliant ideas come.
Exactly. But also, you know, the frustrations that form the basis of life in the ghetto must also be the ladder upon which you ride to go up, you know. So I think that, yes, there are many, many good things in the ghetto and also many bad things. That's where most of the drug issues are at the moment. They are there in the low density areas, but vanondobhema zvakasiyana zvinoenderana neclass.
Yeah.
magetsi haanyanyonetsi
Anonetsa kwese.
Magetsi anganoenda na 5 in the morning every day, and they're back at 10
tine
p.m.
inverter titori nemagetsi
That's not the point.
Yeah. but you see also on that, this is Magetsi is obviously a very important area. But thankfully we have an extra 300 megawatts coming now, and I think Unit 8 will be coming on board also pretty soon. It's not an easy portfolio,
Yeah.
because it's, you know, Panama portfolio, you have, or at least you're not conscious of of your connection to a particular portfolio.
Yeah.
For example, if I ask you now who is the Minister of Energy, you'll be able to tell me I know that.
Yeah.
If I ask you who is the Minister of Trade and Industry, you may not know.
Yeah.
But it's actually important work that happens in the background. But with energy, it touches everyone. And so you find that the Minister of Energy, I think, receives a lot of criticism from everywhere because his ministry covers everyone. And sometimes with little understanding of what he is able to do.
Yeah.
And what you may not be able to do. But that's for him to say to the public.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Because sometimes it's not about promising people that are nas, but it's also just explaining to them, why are we not, why do we not have power now?
Yeah.
When can we have it?
Yeah.
The machine is broken down. It's old. You can blame me as much as you want, but it's old.
Yeah.
It's being repaired. We expect that it will be on in a week. It may not be available at the time that we have said. So you can't keep quiet. So you have to tell them, no, we expected this. But then, COVID. China atadza kuyanga
Supply chain,
so it comes back to what you were saying about communication. It is very, very important to communicate.
So when you get the call, I don't know how it works in terms of being told or of your appointments. When you get the call that you're moving from Deputy Minister of Transport to Minister of Energy, minister, like you said earlier, I guess not all ministries are the same. So that already feels like a bigger ministry, but also into a bigger role. Do you get scared? Like this is a tough ministry that I'm headed to, meaning that the scrutiny is going to be more, and the chances of being considered a failure, for lack of is higher. In that, how does that feel at the time?
To deal with the actual appointment, at least my own experience is you just get a communication. In my last appointment, my daughter is the one who saw the appointment letter on WhatsApp, and I then verified if it was true.
Yeah.
So in my particular case, there was no preparation, there was no consultation, so to speak. But I think if you are at a certain level of responsibility, I think if you are appointable to that level of functionality in government, your role is managerial and not technical.
Yeah.
Which is why one does not have to be a doctor to be a Minister of Health.
Yeah.
Or you are really a manager. So if you do have some managerial skill, you get into an environment, you must understand the business issues in that environment. You may not even have the opportunity to be shocked. You might just be surprised that I'm going into this place. So in my case, I had to read as widely as possible, because I think that leadership is a transformational role. The tendency of government officials is to tell you it was so.
Yeah.
It was so. Yeah. So the obvious answer is, okay, tikaramba tichingozviita so, charamba chingoburitsa results akaita so. You know what I mean? So the first thing is really to try and bring that down. And we don't use that phrase.
Yeah.
What we want are things that will help us to move forward. So that if it's energy, more power.
Yeah.
If it's transport, people get licenses differently and maybe much faster than before. So yeah, that's from outside. It may not even be as daunting as it is when you are inside. When you are inside, as is the case with everything, whether you want to be a councillor or an MP, and I would imagine even a president. Once you are in situ, you are on site, that's when you begin to discover the animal that you are going to be interacting with every day. Because from day one, people are looking to you for power. People are making allegations about you being bought by this or that person that you have never heard of, let alone seen in life. So there is a multitude of challenges which you can't sort of expect. And even the court has of criticism or even shock you, because even your friend will say, but that's rubbish. You know what I mean?
Which is a good thing, right? Your friend should be able to say, I don't agree with what you're doing.
It's a good thing, but it can be unreasonable. I think my first day in Parliament, which was, I think, 2 days after I was appointed as minister, Parliament just, hell broke loose about, and people don't care that we've just been there. They're trying to understand. They want you to provide an answer. Papa. You know what I mean? But it's your duty to remain cool and calm. Get into your space, understand it, read, talk to experts, use your technical staff in the ministry, reach out to, if it's a ZESA issue, to ZESA. Meet them, understand what is doable and why they are not doing certain things, because they will have very legitimate explanations. And maybe your ministry is the one that is being a stumbling block. Maybe one person, so you can't just say, no, I'm a minister and PEMSEC. You have to
go into that
yes, and even talk to people. Want to remember answers on some of the things, so you should be prepared to talk to everyone. Of course, listen to your boss. You'll have his own thinking about what he needs to be done. It's your duty to then say, but this is not quite workable because we don't have this resource, blah, 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 blah. And then you sort of align your approach to the issue.
So the point of let loose when I was thinking about it was I wanted to give myself and other people the opportunity to have conversations around issues that you wouldn't ordinarily have access to. And you're a pretty accessible guy. But there are a couple of topics that I'm going to bring up that we'll run through that I think people would want to hear what your thoughts on are. So the first one is we just saw Sir Wicknell be awarded something, basically win his case. At least that's how it looks on the onset. You were there at the Ministry of Energy while it was ongoing. Thoughts?
Well, look, being a lawyer, I respect judgments of the courts, and I respect the rights of parties to approach the courts for remedies. And in that particular case, it's something that I discussed a lot on social media when I was minister. And remember, the title of the ministry was the Energy and Power Development. And so you had to make sure power is available, but you also had to work towards developing power, which is why the project was of keen interest to me, because it had already started. Resources had been spent, agreements started, so execution was the real issue. But people were in court over one thing or another. and a public entity in the form of this, I was losing all the time, as they have done now.
Yeah.
So I thought that we needed to find a way, and the judgments were not being respected. The judge ordered that people must meet and come up with a position. They never did for a number of years, and I caused them to meet. And sadly, I've been in government now for 3 years. All that has happened is court cases.
Yeah.
On the ground, Abanachinjiri. Rwanda, people don't have power. People need power. So, yeah. So, you can try somebody in the press. It's different from court.
Yeah.
That's the point I was making. That the only beneficiary are the lawyers.
Collect
The
fees.
public is not getting the power. And zese yacho haina mari, but even yekupamhidzira staff, but yekubhadhara malawyer inenge iripo. So let's stop litigation. But people decided to say, I'm saying, Vachivayo should not be prosecuted. I didn't say that. I had no power to say that.
Yeah.
But what I did have power to influence was to say, okay, please stop the litigation. Because
Yeah.
Muru waste money.
Yeah.
Majgiwa, I don't know how many times. Where is this going?
Yeah.
Let's focus more on the... And they, Vanachvayo promised that within a number of months, I think they said 6 months, they would have 30 megawatts, I think.
Yeah.
And 30 megawatts is significant.
Yeah.
And
It's
so for me,
10% of the
so for
project.
me, that was attractive. So I was really just trying to push for the project to go forward. But I'm obviously not sure what is happening now with the project and whether there is a new approach to it. But for me, the fact that he was paid partially pushes me towards saying, look, let's go ahead with it and manage it properly this time. And if there are any other issues, let's talk about them. Yeah.
Moving on to an issue that I saw a little bit differently from most people. When the issue of the loans to the MPs and the ministers came about, I don't think it's extremely irregular for people to get housing loans. I think in most cases it's fair. If you're working for a company that can afford it, they will give you a housing loan. But I think the question when it comes to those loans is firstly that we have a history with in and around our main banks of these non-performing loans. Whether people are taking them out for agriculture after the land reform, or whether people are taking them out for their business projects that then didn't go on. They even set up a unit at the RBZ that bought out some of those debts, Zanco. But my issue, I went round there, but my issue is considering that elections are just coming up now. How does it then work to give someone a loan that they're supposed to be paying back post their term possibly? Considering that earlier you were saying that some of these people, being an MP is their job. So if they lose their job, how are they going to pay back the loan?
Well, yeah, so there are two things that you've mentioned. You've spoken about housing loans for ministers.
Yeah.
I obviously have no information around that. It happened after I left. I'm not a beneficiary of it. But I must say that having been a minister for a very short time, people overrate the position. Particularly the public, when they think maybe ministers earn lots of money. Let me just tell you what happens when you resign or are fired.
Yeah.
Yeah, the car that you're using will be a government car. You will not have bought it. They will value it. You can be told, but 100,000
For the car.
Yeah, I don't know what the salaries are now, but I think during my time it was maybe $700.
As in the salary.
Yes. So, what the public sees is the car.
Yeah.
which is not yours, by the way.
It's a
Like
government
I'm
vehicle.
telling you, when you leave, you're supposed to pay for it or surrender it. It's just that simple.
Yeah.
Yeah, I cannot marry at your see, so you can go home empty-handed. And I also think that there is a certain level of standard of living. I saw somewhere where people were saying, before you elect somebody, and it. So there is a certain expectation. And for you to become an MP and maybe eventually a minister, the irony is you have to spend money to be able to save. And you don't stop spending money. You are spending money each and every day. It's a very expensive enterprise. And for me, it's actually miraculous that I managed to do it over these years. You need to be highly committed to what you are doing. And but I also think maybe, this thing that we're talking about, how people behave in Parliament and so forth, those things are fresh in the minds of the public. And so when they hear that an MP has received 40,000, they don't see value for money. Otherwise, when you look at it in the context of the whole process of becoming an MP, for the 5 years, unobuda mari chaino. Yeah, unobuda mari yemashuwa. And we need to find a way of making sure that it's not like that. It's not that costly for an individual who wants to work for their country or for their government to get into that space. Because it doesn't matter how straight you do your things, it's still very expensive. People ask you about, for anything, school fees. Or mwanangu achikoka boom, and dinagana sent. You know what I mean? Somebody's cancer in their mouth and the person they look to is you. And so when you look at that loan within the context of what the MP is supposed to do, I can tell you, I'm lucky my constituency spreads from Marlborough, Noskaku, well, until recently, it was about 120 k's from here. Now it's less because the rural part was moved. I'm lucky. But if you have guys like Waine, Rushinga, Mbire, kwese kunana mwenezi what nokwana wadya jena uko. I see people always blaming him for the road, and I say, having worked in the Ministry of Transport, I have an idea of how much it costs to repair just a kilometer per road.
$1 million apparently.
I mean, that's a thing that falls squarely on government, not on the MP. The MP can help, like you are saying, sometimes that's all that you can do. Because okay, probably 5 times investment. Then you need an engineer to look at that thing and supervise it, builders and so forth. So it's really beyond most people, but I just hope that the MPs who will come this time around will realize that the public has a certain perception of that function, and that not just a perception but an expectation as well. And that once you get in there, you just need to live up to that expectation, or if the kitchen is too hot, don't go near it.
The last of these interesting, or maybe 2 more. The one is the gold mafia. Taking the internet by storm. But surprisingly for me, maybe not so much on the actual streets. I don't think people are talking about it on the corner. What's your take? What's your feeling about it in general?
Well, it would have been luckier if we're having this interview after the
last couple of episodes.
Yes. It's a bit difficult to judge. I think there are principally 2 issues. we are under sanctions. We've got to find a way. The Rhodesians did that. They found their own way. But also the other side of that situation is the possibility that some people have latched onto maybe our national effort to deal with our situation and maybe are doing their own things. But it's very difficult at the moment without having seen the full documentary rather, to give a proper valuation. But it's certainly an important discussion that is happening. The feedback from the streets, maybe many people didn't see it. Maybe, I mean, a lot, like number 3 was really about South Africa.
Yeah.
And for me, it was more of a damp squib as far as I'm concerned. South Africa, it also have a so it wasn't really of much interest. But let's see how it goes. It may not be as dramatic as maybe people are making it to appear. But certainly, I think the idea, the issues are the ones that I've stated. They need to bust sanctions, and they need to make sure that individuals don't latch on those efforts for personal gain. If everything is for the national gain, I think it's understandable.
It's interesting because the Herald today published that they froze Simon Rudland and Hubert Angel's accounts. Which was funny enough. There was someone tweeted something funny, and they said they froze their accounts, yet the documentary said that everything is moving in bags, which I thought was hilarious. But also, we've now started to see people like do the spin for it. Like, no, this is what it could be. This is what it could be. But there are definitely some issues of concern there, for sure. And that's why people's bank accounts are getting frozen. It means there's an acknowledgement. And I think that acknowledgement is important from the government of the day in some shape or form, as opposed to acting as if it's not happening. So I am glad to see that that's going on, and hopefully once maybe the 4th episode is out, then you'll get a more comprehensive statement from the authorities.
I think it's good that some action has been taken. But remember, people have defenses against things. So it's not like it's final. They may end up with court proceedings where somebody has a perfectly legitimate explanation. We do not know the motivation behind the documentary. We don't know what else should be there or what else was said, which is not in the documentary. So it's an interesting mix of things that needs to be looked at. But I think it's important that action has been taken on the basis of admissions by some of the individuals, particularly at the airport. So,
for sure. The last one of keen interest to me as a young creative, I'm not really, but I consider myself a little bit, is the issue around Winky D and Holyten. I don't know how much of that you were following as it was happening. And I said, this was my take when we discussed it on radio. I said, I don't think music can't be political. I think music in its nature is very often political. And it's important for it to be allowed to be political. I don't think once people say, oh, this is a political song, it now has to be a divide. I know you try and keep abreast a little bit with the happenings in that arts industry. What was your take on that situation?
I obviously followed it with quite some interest. I took the time to listen to Winky D's music. I've never met him, but I love his music. And I love Winky D's music. You know what I mean? And I also love, literature and poetry. So when people start making these criticisms, I take the time to listen and say, okay, is this a problem.
Yeah.
Because a musician is a product of their material conditions. Anoimba zvekughetto nhamo dzaanoona. You know what I mean? Troubles and tribulations.
Yeah.
And to be honest, I was surprised at what the whole hullabaloo was about.
Yeah.
Because I have since listened to music which is patently political,
Yeah.
which nobody is talking about.
Yeah.
You see? And I also don't think that musicians, writers, and so forth should be interfered with in their freedoms to create.
Yeah.
Right? Egypt yakambonetsa.
Yeah.
I mean, for me, Egypt just represents a desirable state of affairs.
The promised land. Yeah.
And I just think sometimes we blow things out of you know the correct way they should be moving.
Yeah.
I think rather we need to create, and I'm glad that the Deputy Minister of Sports and Culture did speak against some of these things that fuel mistrust even between political parties when they are not involved. Because somebody from a party decides to make a statement which is not authorized, doesn't come through the official channel, but is then ascribed to an entire institution. So I love Winky D's music. I don't think he has done anything wrong. And if you want to look at it politically, both sides sing political songs.
Yeah.
Sakawe is the problem. Let us not tether people or hinder them from creativity. I have sung songs myself. And I wouldn't want somebody to come and tell me uti imba so. Saka totoita ka database rema lyrics.
Yeah.
Utsvaga rhythm wongotango ungoimba. Let people sing what they want. Let those who write what they want. It's there in the Constitution.
Yeah.
There's very little room for debate or imposing your own, because you know musical taste is not universal.
No, it's not.
Munhu anoda zvaanoda. Let people sample. Ukanzwa kuti ari kuimba politics dzausingadi usateerere. Dzima radio yako. Oseva solar kana une solar kana oseva. Anditi rather than trying to azoimbirei zvakati. Every one of us is political.
Yeah.
Tese tema political views. Some just don't have the channel. Vamwandoimba dziyo dziri political dzisingabude. Ngoti dzawinki dziri popular dzinobuda dzinobudwa nemunhu. But quite frankly, I don't think. And then this apparent conflict now, Holyten, youngster that have also met, some of it I think we the public also fueled it.
Yeah.
Because isusu toda Winky dite isingada kuti acriticizwe. Anditi uyo aitaura kuti ini zvakataura paipai.
Anziwala zazimwari.
Ndafunga kuti pamwe dzimwe beef dzekunyepera dzinomboitwa muZimbabwe dzedu. And my own Gideon and but look, I think it's very difficult to understand Holyten's approach without talking to him.
Yeah.
But I certainly think that collaborations, for me, most of the music I've done is collaboration, and they produced a good sound because they collaborated. That song would have been different without that collaboration.
Yeah.
And I would personally encourage them to do more and not fight at all.
Yeah.
Yeah, because when even the big guys, and Tukudzi especially, they did a lot of collaborations with young people. And, you know, there are a lot of benefits arising from that. But it's unfortunate. I hope it has now been sorted out and that
I mean, you know, I think Holyten, and I don't know him personally. We maybe exchanged a couple of messages, but I think Holyten he's a rapper. And that is, it's culture, right? It's contact sport, and it brings in the attention to what he's doing. I think that's at its core what he's doing. Whether that's right or wrong then becomes, whatever. But I think in terms of why he's doing it, it's pretty clear.
The lead of the youth, speak of the truth. Ukutungamira vanhu njozoti pamba mchizo vanhu murinyoka.
Like I said, is it right or wrong? Yeah, or interpretation. But in Indrungotarati, I understand the metrics of why he's doing it. My numbers will follow it.
I think in life, life generally like this. He's a very clever and talented young man himself.
Yeah.
And I'm very sure that he would have been able to see good in Drukushandis. Because unfortunately, it has a soldier love, so Ngosko Mirapa Maiko Tanga Kuto Mainsa Rimi Pap. But Vagato discuss. I hope I would do that myself if I'm going to sing with somebody. Because also go kanda mashoko ako.
I mean, to be fair, also what happened with that was, if you listen to the song, so on Igbo, the song, the first half of it, well, not the first half of it, but Winky D's half of it is quite political in terms of, and I say political in terms of he's talking about the economy, he's talking about positions, and he's talking about corruption, etc. Holyten's verse is actually not about that. He's actually addressing young ladies. Like, it's more Winky D saying this is a situation that's been created. And then Holyten's saying you need to manage how you operate within that situation. I don't know if Anna Bos Jagadaro, what. And I know we're about to get to the end. I asked for about an hour of your time. But if you were talking to a 30-year-old, so I'm 31, but if you're talking to a 30-year-old who had political aspirations, but is skeptical about how to go about it, and I say, like, the skepticism coming out of the fact that we're in a polarized environment. It almost feels like once you're a Zanu PF person, you're a Zanu PF person. If you're a CCC person, you're a CCC person. So if someone wanted to map out their way to the top, I want to be president. Would you advise them to not join a political party now while you wait and see what is happening closer to the time that you want to enter politics? Or would you say to them, join a political party and then be fluid?
Yeah, so I guess the first thing to consider is why
do you want to do
you want to get into politics? I don't believe that you should say, I want to get into politics because I want to be president. Because there are so many predeterminants of that process. But I think the singularly important yardstick to aim for is that you want to save your country. And I think if you deviate from that, you're likely to confuse yourself. Yeah, there are so many structures, political structures. Now I think with so many political parties driven by a variety of issues. Some groupings have been formed around special interests or specific interests. Say, for example, people living with albinism.
Yeah.
They may want to form their own political party to deal with their specific issues and extract value from government. And so there is a lot of foreplanning that is needed. And indeed, I've spoken to many young people who want to be involved in politics. And I think it's good to do that. There is no problem as far as I'm concerned. There's no conflict between the old and the young. I think the relationship is symbiotic. Pano zvinozikanwa navanhu vakuru. Pakuita zvinozikanwa nevechidiki, where they are good at. And that cross-pollination of ideas, for me, I think is very, very important. For example, you know, things, you know, high-tech stuff and so forth are better understood by young people. Even little children can probably operate a TV remote better.
Or TV remote.
Yeah, exactly. So it's an appreciation of that. But where they are able to advise you to say, no, this doesn't work. It was done 20 times, it doesn't work. What works is this, try this, and move in this fashion. But I think we're in that state of mind where we say Madara. I've seen it on Twitter. Madara is yeah, and then you vanwadiko vanenge vachitaurwa nezvavo hapana zvavanoziva, or you have no experience. Yeah, they do know a lot of stuff. Yeah, there are many things even in my house which if I need fixed, I have to ask one of the young people to andigadzirwa. Yeah, and it has happened to me. I've had older politicians asking me, I would wonder no go nice. Please can you help me with this? And I think that's all that we really need. But my view is that young people need to be fully engaged in the political life of the country. They are vested not just for the future but for the present. And it's within their right to do that. And our major concern should be, is this good for our country? That's all. That's why you find in America they will have a common position, say, on Russia. As Americans.
Left
despite
or right.
they've got their own two political parties, but they converge when it's necessary. And I think we should be able to get to that point.
You wanted to ask about Ravens.
Yeah, fighting Ravens. Fighting Ravens. Kana kuti
yanga iri fight hamuna kuona munhu achienda kuhospitari. Ambulance hauna kuiona here. Ambulance was there. Pana akatinwa akatorapata titasa
vakato
hauna kuona kana pataita nhingi press conference. Unodoona ndichida kumasha paipo.
Andakazoona vantu papanda director Dave kakumashira achiti
abaya yaitorified. But look, we had lots of fun. There was a lot of preparation for that fight. Unfortunately, I got it during COVID. But the feedback we got from all over the world was fantastic. Because Mazimbo Arugu diaspora were actually waiting for that fight, you know. And for me personally, it got me to understand what happens in the boxing industry. I have a bit of understanding of what happens in soccer, how it's difficult for talented people to rise. Tikanado anotambira team A kune chiblazi chimwe chenje chakatomirira mari yemwana anenge ari kwamutare.
So which brings me to this question. Ray Vines at that point, he was at his peak, but I got dominate the industry to that, and I'm proud of him. But then there was this thing that happened when he said that he was going through some mental issues that made him to stop whatever he was doing. And it's not only Ray Vines who was going through some mental issues. Most of these young men, some of them, they're even doing these drugs because they are going through some difficulties. What can you tell these young people who are going through this difficult time, because right now questioning iri mubrains emunhu ndande kuti mari yekurora ndichaiona kuri ende mari yechekutorora pane pasina ende ana boss chakadaro vanenge vachitotora vanhu zvemashuwa. So what can you tell these young men who are going through this,
Yeah, you know what? We spoke about my early life earlier on. There are many people of my generation and beyond who lived a tough life. And drugs were not the answer. So like wangu drugs. Manje ngezanziripo. Yes. Tatombodzitarisa hawo zoratidza ukandisi kuda kupinda. Anditika. And so a lot of young people are destroying their lives. Ninyama drugs. Dobadon, I don't know what's happening with him now. I try to look for him. Because I have a constituents very talented. He could be somewhere now. Ndotoona mwe mfana mglendo andikaita a very beautiful song. The wreck now. So Soldier Love, a good friend of mine, downfall is drugs. And now my drugs are to penetrate, especially Mugeto.
Yeah.
And I know you to caution young people against my drugs. Trying to experiment. It looks pleasurable in the beginning, but once you get hooked, you are done. You'll destroy your lives for nothing. Crystal meth.
Yeah.
Nakatozozama imanje kuti Soldier Love paiti television thing, high definition, aitotaura zvinhu zviri mukati. Anditi maona. But he's also somebody, not because he's gone, but we had a very good relationship. And we spoke a lot about his health condition as well as drugs. But it was clear to me that I was fighting a losing battle. But there he was, highly talented individual who it was very difficult to work with him because zvake zvazviri muropa. Zvechibabesti zvenge zvizvo kuda kugadzira. So yeah, all I can say is please siyanai my drugs. And then all these people that are supporting my drugs, it's varupota vachi-supplier. They are killing generations. And I used to see it when I went to my studio akawanda. Can talk of St. Mary's, Seke, Chitungwiza, I feel I've been there, Mbare, I've been there. And I could see the traffic. Yevanu, we also tenga prongo. And we need to deal with that. And it's heartening that government is taking a tough stance against drugs. But we don't just want to deal with the monargu. We want the entire value chain. It starts from the supply. Nekuma kunonzi kunoitwa kunozonorapwa vanhu kana vane madrugs.
Rehabilitation center.
Yes, rehab yoanda kuregulatwa because even kana vachinziwo 1,200 yeaccommodation before doctor, before medication. Who is going to afford that? Nobody.
Yeah.
So that's an area also which I think government should be able to address by regulating. They're an important part of the jigsaw puzzle, and they need to be regulated. What they charge needs to be regulated. What they can or cannot do also needs to be regulated. Otherwise, because people will not be rehabilitated. Yeah. So
the issue around drugs for me, I think my biggest concern is if you go to Mbari today and you ask them about drugs in Mbari and Tengesokupi, you'll be given a name, pretty, common name.
Yeah.
And it's difficult for me to believe that if I have that information as Dennis Nagaraku Avondale, the police in Mbari doesn't know about this. Or, it feels like the fight may not be as sincere as is being made out to be. I don't know if that's unfair.
Yeah, well, this is why I'm saying, there are various players. Antone vanhu vanotoziva kuti apo panotengeswa madhongi.
Yeah.
Next munhu ari kutengesa ndone next door yake isingaite anything about it. Zvokuti ukaenda kune mwana ari hooked unonzwa achinzi ari pabhesi. Handiti ukaenda nemapurisa nomwana vanhu vatiza ipapo. Handiti vari kuudzwa nevanhu vari mucommunity. So no single entity is able to deal with this. Vana vadiki, they may say that I think and there's some element of truth in it. When you are unemployed, you can't do anything, you're frustrated. You might think, wow, watch I weigh drug. There are people who are hooked onto beer because they are frustrated either emotionally or economically or for whatever reason. So I just think there needs to be a lot more effort to publicize these situations and address them wholeheartedly. There should be no room for corruption to allow kuti munhu ari kutengesa bronco iri kupinda sei kubhodha. Nditi paine offload vanhu vanenge vachitoona kuti bronco iri kutengeswa nanhingi. So there is a lot of integrity that is required for us to deal with that. And more families, more there could be things happening, fights and so forth. But drugs are not the answer. It's just as simple as that.
What is also said is, Mazono, even my primary school kids, they are now
to the,
so
ndakanzwa kuti kune mamwe maschools unotengeswa mafrozen but akatoiswa munyati mukati. I think that's devilish. Izi ndo nyaya dzekutongoti idzodzo 20 years watengesa frozen one 20 years inside. That's the only way to deal with people like that, because
it's senseless crime.
It's different when it's people like us here who have sound mind. Paunto decide kuti ndakuita sei ndakuda kudai so kumwana ari grade 2. Why is that being done to them?
They can't consent.
So maybe government might need to consider removing vese vanhu vanotengesa zvinhu zvepa outside schools. It may appear drastic and it will affect some innocent people, but at least you know that the kids are not exposed to adults who are doing foolish stuff.
And it will be enough of a deterrent as well for anyone who thinks that this is a game where all I need to do is keep 20 to give the police officer.
I used to enroll when I was in private practice, drug-related issues. There was a mandatory term of imprisonment unless you could show special circumstances. So I remember representing some young men from Zambia, angane 1 tablet remand drugs. Right? Akatoenda 15 years. 1 tablet. So I think our laws need to gravitate towards that. We can address everything else, but what we must make sure is these people who are importing gonyetre seremani brongo.
This was meant to be let loose, but it got a little bit dark over there. And also as just as we round up, what comes next for Mr. Chasi? Do you prefer Advocate Chasi or?
I'm not a titles person. I
You're
don't
not
like
a title.
titles. No, you can actually call me Iwe. I'll still be happy.
So what's next for Iwe?
Well, look.
Now that you said you're not going to be running as an independent.
I lost. I accept that. I don't think necessarily it's a negative thing. Obviously, I stood because I felt that I still had appetite to work in that capacity. But for me, it opens up other opportunities. If you're an MP, there are things you can't do. You're also mired in politics. So even if somebody wants you to be on a board, they start thinking, politics. If you are sending money, mkuru.com, you must fill my form because you are politically exposed and so forth. So for me, I think it's an opportunity to look at other things that I can do, and there's just too many things for me to do. I started a law firm, Chasi Goods, last year. It's cruising very well. We're happy and delighted.
Congratulations.
In fact, before I came here, I was meeting business people from Rwanda, and they were saying, but why don't you come to Rwanda? You know what I mean? And if one, Parliament meets 3 days a week, you can't go to Rwanda. And
Parliament meets 3 days a week throughout the year. Or just in seasons?
No, in the terms.
Okay.
But Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday afternoons, Parliament sits. But in between, there could be committees that are meeting across, traveling around the country, or having meetings, public meetings at Parliament.
I see.
Yeah, so it's time consuming. So, look, I'm taking a very positive view of all this. I'm still available to serve in any public position, not just as a minister. Yeah. You know, there are many people that have worked for our country who operated very quietly in seemingly unimportant positions, but they've made a huge impact. And I think those are the true heroes and heroines of our country. Being minister is just one role. Being an MP is just another role. One may not be a very good MP, but be a very good minister. And vice versa. Yeah. So I would say there's a lot coming. I have a bit more free time with my family and kids, Wazukuru. I'm sure they are wondering where I am now because Todone program, Dori said, but it's not always that you have that opportunity. So I'll maximize on that. Also, studio time. Borwa Mangoma, Botsika Maspika, Panayazo,
Bujamba Manamba.
Mageto Yitagato Uti, Shmabist.
Where can we find your music? Here's an opportunity to plug the music.
It's there on
YouTube.
On YouTube, SoundCloud. I haven't used the latest. So I'm actually trying to pull all my music together because I never really publicized there. There are songs that I know are hits if they come out, which I never took time to publicize. So now I'm going to be more formalized, sing, launch, video, market.
Tushitama video.
But thank you.
Thank you so much for coming and spending this time with us.
Yeah. Thank you.
Apologies for Jason and what he was asking you during the time.
Yeah, he's a member of the public. They ask anything.
But yeah, that's it.